there's that whole thing in school where like, why am I learning this kind of thing? And so this is like a really clear, like, well, like the reason that you're learning about frequency and wavelength and amplitude is because like this is the basis of what music is.
When we think about design, we tend to think about objects, either a tactile object that you interact with or a screen that you touch and change to make something happen. Now, when we think about design in a more conceptual way, then it's actually designing the experience that matters rather than just the screen. It's the question of what are you actually designing that's going to be meaningful for someone else to be interacting with. Thinking about it like this allows you to also think about other things that are designed around you. Like, for instance, I'm a teacher and I'm designing a class or a program for someone else to teach or for me to teach, but then there are different people that are going to be interacting with that design. For instance, if we have a lesson and everybody's bored and just want to leave, you know that you've done something wrong with your design. However, if people are really excited in general about the class and you see that the results are students are excited, inspired, and are making things, then you know that you did a pretty good job. In this conversation with Wes from STEM Modular, we're exploring this territory because what Wes had done is create a modular synth that is meant not really for playing music as the conventional modular companies do, but more for education. And not really education of music, but education of science lessons, physics, for instance. So instead of learning things from graphs, you can actually play around with frequencies and understand by listening and looking at the oscilloscope to understand what is really happening. This is remarkable because education should be more interactive and should be more engaging, and the fact that we can create experiences like this is amazing. So, without further ado, Wes from STEM Modular.
I went to engineering school and I was kind of inspired to try out that path based on art and music and synthesizers and electronic music. I was on a different kind of trajectory at some point when I kind of got out of high school. I was on a different path. I actually went to nursing school for a little while. That just like wasn't my thing, and I had an interest in audio even back in high school, but I was kind of discouraged actually by adults because I like really I wasn't like loving math. Like math is cool, like, and I did okay, but like I also kind of struggled, and it like really wasn't you know what I think the adults around thought of as like an engineer. It's like you got to love math and you're just doing math all the time, and if you don't like just totally love math, that you that's not the right thing for you. So I went off on this other trajectory, but I still had like audio in mind, and that was something that I was interested in. And the weirder that my music taste got, the the more I started thinking about what was going on behind the scenes of this music that I was listening to. And eventually I was playing music with a guy who was an electrical engineer, and he was able to do all this really cool stuff. He was like writing code so that our guitars could trigger samples and all this cool stuff. And I was really inspired by that. And so I decided to like try it out again. And it still was really difficult to get through the schooling, but because I had this context and I kind of knew, all right, like if I work really hard on the math and physics, and I could do all this cool stuff, with all that information, and it helped me get through that. And so when I get out of school, out of college, this was like around 2015. I went to City College here in New York City, and I was bartending, and I met through my bartending gig, met Mark Verbus, and the guys at the bar knew that what I was interested in and what I was trying to do, and kind of like linked us up. And so then I started working for Mark. And as I was doing that, I was thinking about kind of like my own experience. I was also doing, towards the end of college, I was working as an after school tutor and doing after school programs at some of the schools in the city here. And so I started thinking about how to combine those things together,
Mm.
and yeah, and that was kind of like how STEM Modular started. And um, it's been kind of slowly growing since then. And now this past year has been like more of a larger growth. I think that, um, uh, to be honest, like part of it was I was kind of moving along a little bit slowly. And all the stuff that happened last summer with Black Lives Matter and the protests and everything really kind of like lit a little bit more of a fire, because I'm thinking like, what can I do? Like, how could I help? Like, how could I make a difference? And then I started thinking, well, part of this whole idea I had was to kind of help facilitate like kind of a path, potential path into STEM careers, or STEM interest, or just making STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math, in case anyone doesn't know that. But to make that kind of more accessible to anybody, particularly people that it's maybe in a situation where it's they. I think part of it is that we don't always see ourselves in those fields, or we maybe don't have people around that are doing that. Um, but yeah, anyways, the kind of accessibility component was big, and thinking about how I can help kind of drove me to figure out who else is doing cool stuff, and starting to talk to other people. I linked up with some people through the pandemic, like Aaron from AfroRack. I ended up just kind of reaching out through Instagram, and then we started talking, and that was a really inspirational connection. And that helped to kind of get certain balls moving as well. And then also LaFrey from um, a Willie May Rock Camp, and I think it's just Willie May Camp, and they have a Future Sounds project that's built around synthesizers, and talking to her about what she's doing, and just feeling like, yeah, it's a long-winded, maybe getting long-winded, but there's other people doing this kind of thing. And to be honest, the design portion of what I'm doing seems like more of what's valuable. Initially I thought maybe it was like making things really affordable, which is that's part of it. But I think there's plenty of manufacturers that are understand or are willing to donate equipment, but also making things approachable and like understandable, and that you don't need to do black magic to understand what's going on behind, or what's going on with the synthesizers, and that it could yeah, making those connections to STEM, I think, is important too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a long way of
No,
telling
no,
you
but
what I've been up to.
this is cool, because my first question would be like, what is your background? How did this start? So you basically answered that. That's perfect. Um, what do you think is the role of a synthesizer in education? Why a synthesizer? Why a synthesizer is a thing that could be used to educate?
Yeah, I love that. It's um, one of the kind of buzzwords that I've been thinking about lately is like cross curricular. So like this is something where it's simultaneously deeply rooted in the physics, math, communications, engineering world, and also that's part of what makes it creative. you know? So it's almost like the perfect thing because it's rooted in both of these things at the same time. So when you use it in a classroom, creating sounds is part of what, like, you need to learn a little bit about voltage, signals, frequencies, amplitude, all those stuff you have to learn about in order to really utilize the system. So uh it's not like, there's that whole thing in school where, like, why am I learning this kind of thing. And so this is like a really clear, like, well, like, the reason that you're learning about frequency and wavelength and amplitude is because, like, this is the basis of what music is. And you're not going to be, necessarily making like a full track with like a small stem modular system, although you totally could do some really cool, soundtrack work or ambient or whatnot. But if you're making like a dance track, it might not get you there. But you're still going to be able to understand like the fundamentals, and then that can take you to all kinds of different places. Once you know that, then it just opens up a whole nother world, whether you're doing just audio, whether you're interested just in music or electronic music, or like my other gig is as an engineer is like a communications and like radio
Hmm.
communications. I work with the fire department here in New York City, so like that's actually totally relevant to what I'm doing. I even like at some point posted a picture because I'm like looking in at like a radio repeater schematic, and I posted a picture with some things highlighted because it's just oscillator, voltage controlled amplifier, voltage controlled filter or whatever, like all that stuff's like in what I'm doing, for to make the radios work for the fire department. But it's also what I use when I'm making music as well.
Yeah. The classes that you're working with are how does it work? Like, what age are they?
So the class that there's all the in-person stuff kind of stopped once COVID hit.
Hmm.
I was doing in-person workshops, and that was part like a what was the idea initially, is to have workshops be a bigger part of things. And this, you know, COVID was just kind of this opportunity to dig deeper into the hardware. And Also, one of the things that came out of that was these connections, different connections that I've made. So um, it tends to be, and the kind of the focus now is at this moment is more towards middle school, maybe
Hmm.
high school.
Okay.
Just trying to distill it a little bit more because it can get super, super broad. And that's been like, I ended up having a lot of ideas. So I have to kind of just focus. And so right now it's been focusing on that. There's a school here in the city that is going to be using 9 systems
Hmm.
to in their physics in an 8th grade physics class.
Cool.
So yeah, that's just given an opportunity to look into that and look into some of the standards, to the education standards, that there's correlations there, and trying to um, find the pieces that connect so that it's easier for teachers to just see the connection and
Hmm.
then be able to apply it.
Yeah. So if I understand it correctly, the teacher could actually run a course with this without you. This is
Yes.
designed for the teacher to work with the students. They have 9 systems, and they could work in duos, I can imagine,
Right.
because yeah, right.
Yeah. There's 2 headphone outputs for the system, and so that either you work with another student or a teacher can throw on the headphones and work. And if you've ever been to a synth convention, you know that, like, if you have everyone on a speaker, it's just like kind of
It's a mess.
madness, but it's
Absolutely.
cool. It's a fun experience. Although, like, after like 2 or 3 days of that, you really feel like you're losing it, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah. Yeah, so this is just, and I've actually been working with the teacher too to develop the curriculum or find, I'm kind of open and available to make it work however they need, but
Mm.
um uh there's just certain things in physics that are directly relate. So it's not that difficult to get it in there, and I see it in a little bit kind of like a chemistry lab, you
Mhm.
know,
Yeah,
like that's kind of pervasive in schools. Like everyone goes through school, and at some point there's some kind of chemistry thing along the way.
yeah,
And when you really think about it, synthesizers are like a lot safer than like Bunsen burners and hydrochloric acid. Yet we give
definitely.
that. Nobody thinks twice about giving that to a high school student.
That's that's really interesting, to bring it in the context of studying physics, and also in the context of like I would really want in my classes, like with the kits that I just started developing, I would
Mhm.
love to be able to just give it to a teacher that teaches user experience and just allow them to run a course with it. Of course, it's really different because it's a different subject, it's a different topic of education, but um, I see correlation. That's what I'm trying to say, and I think that it's interesting. It seems like you didn't really study any user experience design or anything like that.
No, I would
Yeah,
say that my Verbus was my user experience design course
okay.
potentially.
Because what you just did with the teacher is something that is considered just like part of the research. You're doing research into user experience. You know that the two main stakeholders that are going to be using this are a teacher and a class. And
Right.
then the teacher is the expert. So he's the expert in the domain, and you want to try to understand from them what are the pain points, how could they use it, what are the different problems. And then based on what you learn from them, you make the design decisions because you're able to make the design and to engineer the thing to apply to their needs.
Totally. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think um you know hopefully that the design is kind of there and clear so that it's really easy, and they can just kind of pick up and use it, and not have to worry too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean the nice thing about, I do all, everything's lasered wood that I'm doing, which is nice too, because if they want to add anything, it's super easy to just be like, all right, we're gonna, let's change this or add a little indicator here or something like that, which is nice.
Yeah,
But
true. Because yeah, they normally have these makers labs in school, so they could just print their plates.
right, that's also, was an idea from the beginning too. How can this be something where someone can kind of do a lot of the work on their own if they want to, keep it
Mm,
real cheap?
yeah. And if you think about the STEM modular modules, what does it take for a module to go into your research, into your kit?
Uh, let's see. I mean, so far it's been really classic synthesizer uh, building blocks,
Hmm.
has been a big thing, and kind of maybe like figuring out what's going to give a lot of possibilities while also kind of trimming the fat a little bit too, you know. So it's like there's you could go so crazy. You can go so crazy and put so many features, um, but also have to think about kind of typical design, or I guess maybe like it from the engineer's design standpoint, like how do we make this more simple, or how do we kind of cut costs a little bit, something
Mm.
like that. Um, um, but also giving access to a lot of, I mean, ins and outs, I guess, so uh, it started out with a really basic synth voice and control that's going to be, control voltage modules that you'd find in any synthesizer. Um, Basically because, it's something that I also want it to be something that can translate to other things
Mhm.
fairly easily. If you learn about one thing, then it's going to translate over here, and it might get like fancier or flashier somewhere else, but you're going to have the basic idea of something. And now, as I've been designing, once I had the basics out of the way, now as I'm designing, I'm thinking more about, all right, and this is kind of the fun part. Now, the fun part kind of starts now of what are modules that I can make that are going to have pieces of like really fundamental ideas, but that are also really cool and can be really useful in a modular system. So I've been working on this window comparator module recently, where you're just setting high and low voltages,
Mhm.
and you can create like a gate sequence just based on setting these voltages up, setting values basically, and it's really just a simple comparisons, but
Mhm.
is a building block in engineering and a building block in synthesis, and also like really fundamental math built, like what's greater than or less than, um so yeah, trying to that's where things are headed, and I'm kind of excited about digging more into that, just finding ideas that feel like they can exist in both worlds and be exciting, useful in the classroom, and maybe also hopefully like exciting in the modular world,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah, it seems like the ideas that give feedback, immediate feedback that you can really sense quickly, are the ones that work really well with education. I made a mistake with my mixer. The mixer was supposed to be DC coupling, but it's
Mm-hmm.
AC coupling.
Uh-huh.
But then it was actually a nice thing, because when I combined two waves, it actually created this frequency modulation that to the students was really easy to explain. And because they're
Mm,
not really coming from synthesis, or even like most of them are not musicians, they were just really excited about technology. It was easier. It was really easy for them to understand. Okay, this is one signal. This is another signal. We merge them together, and we get a new frequency, a new shape of a yeah.
I love that.
So
Happy accidents.
yeah, so these and it just has to do with feedback. It's like the feedback that they receive right away is audible, and it's instantly they understand this because it changes the sound. It was the same thing with filter and resonance. That was maybe a bit hard for them to understand at the beginning, but then after a couple of sweeps, they all of a sudden like, oh yeah, now I can actually recognize this. And
Mm,
I compare this to my 3-year-old, when like about a year and a half ago, he was learning colors. It's basically frequencies. And I was so surprised that
right.
he doesn't really see the difference. And then at a certain point, he understands it, and you see that he doesn't really understand the nuance. And it's just like with this, like if you're
Huh.
not really listening to music in that way that we're used to, we're listening to like we're mixing stuff, we're combining sounds together, we're creating productions of a song, then you understand how to use frequencies, and you start hearing these things that other people don't really hear. And when you take a building block like a filter, and you just show this is the filter without, this is the filter with resonance, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, I get this now.
Yeah, yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, I think back about like when I was first making music and playing guitar, and I was in the young days listen to a lot of like metal and classic rock, but when I would hear like a Rhodes in a song, just be like, what is, I don't even really understand what it is. You're just kind of like, it's just like a strange sound, like, and it seems like it's kind of magical, and then moving into synthesizers also, it's just like, what the heck is going on here? And then as you get, yeah, more of a context for it, you can start to pick out, you know, people that will tell you exactly what synth it is from just hearing.
Yeah, that is
It's
just crazy. That is just crazy.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's get back to a class. So you're designing a system that's aimed at education, working with teachers and students.
Mhm.
Um, were there like certain surprises that you got from talking to teachers or seeing students working with a system that you felt like this should be fixed for the next version?
um
Maybe not. I don't know.
you know, well, there was uh I don't know if there was anything that was like there were things that were kind of in the process. In the early stages, I had things I was kind of prototyping and just, you know, just wanting to get things in front of kids. Um, and I remember there was like um, I was doing a workshop at a library, and this little girl was playing with. She had to be, I don't know, maybe like 9 years old or something,
Hmm.
and she was playing with something that I had there, and she was just like, "Yeah, this isn't working right." Like she had never touched, you know, this is like brand new stuff to her, but she was just like, "Yeah, it's not working right." And I was just like, "Oh yeah, you know, you're totally right. Yep, you're spot on. You're good." You know, like she picked up on what wasn't flowing correctly, you know. And I think that was just an interesting experience. And I think more than anything, was what's cool is that um, kids using things and getting sounds out of stuff that I didn't never imagined coming out of it, or using something in a way that I didn't really, you know, ever think about it being used that way. And I think that maybe in some like subtle way that's kind of like fed into um, to some of the design, but in a way it's been um, having that almost like a beta testing, in that, like, you know, kids are just like, they don't care how it's supposed to be used. They're just like, you know, gonna like flick a switch back and forth like over and over and over again, that like you're just thought was just a setting, you know, and they're just using it as an instrument, you know. And then making just sounds that are I would never have thought of. But it's encouraging as a
What was
designer.
the switch?
I was trying to think, what was that particular thing. I can't remember what that was on now. Yeah, I don't remember
Yeah,
what it was, but I have a video of it because I was like, I took a video because I was just surprised, like, this is cool, you know. But yeah, it's floating somewhere on Instagram.
mm,
But yeah, it's nice to see that things hold up, and it's inspiring to just see new users that they don't have the, I think even sometimes honestly being at like a synth convention or something like that, where everyone's kind of in the synth mindset. And I've been in this situation myself, where you approach something, there's like a modular system, and it's kind of intimidating, and yet you're like, maybe like you turn a knob but didn't really do anything, and then you're like in this position of like, I must have, I don't know what I'm doing, and I didn't do this thing right. And you know, and you're kind of just a little bit of just like kind of chin scratching and appreciating what the system is. But if for the most part, you know, up until a certain age, uh kids don't care, and they're just using it. If the knob doesn't do something, then they're like, this doesn't work, or you know,
yeah.
why isn't this making anything change? Or they're just going to start going crazy and making whatever sound, just getting sound out of it, which I think is just a really inspiring approach. You know, I had my a 60 HP system I brought to my sisters, who had, at the time, my nephew was about maybe like 2 years old, and I just let
Mm,
him go crazy. He just plugged everything into everything.
Yeah.
Didn't give any guidance, was just, outs to outs in, what, like, it doesn't matter, just doing everything that he could do. And it created a noisy mess. And it was, let me know, all right, if someone patches this in some just totally random way, it's going to be okay. But also was fun to just hear what he came up with.
Yeah. I can imagine that there's quite a bit of design for human error in that sense. Just like you said, but because people can just plug anything to anything, switch things in a really aggressive way, perhaps. And yeah, as the designer of the thing, that's like part of the requirements, is that it actually needs to be for people who don't know what they're going to be connecting to what. That's just part of it.
It's got to be kind of rugged, right? And user error or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Human error. It's it's a very common concept where whenever you feel like you're working with a machine and you feel like the machine hates you, you're like, why are you like, why like, I was just trying to move from Google Drive to Microsoft OneDrive, whatever, because whatever. And then whatever reason, don't ask me why, but I tried it and it tells me I cannot sync this file. And there are like 95 files like this. And I'm like, okay, give me some information. What should I do with this? I click on it. It just opens the general folder of Microsoft OneDrive. I'm like, okay, where is this file? Show me the problem so I'll know what to do with it. So I'll take me further, direct me through. But it doesn't, and that's basically like that's a flaw in user experience design. You're not you're not designing for the for what I'm supposed to do now. You're not educating me enough, so I'll be able to fix the problem. And this is where you get a lot of frustration, which in your case, for instance, could be a student just connects whatever input to another input, output to another output, and then all of a sudden the thing blows. And you're like, as a bad engineer, you'd be like, yeah, but that's your problem. You didn't read the manual.
So I hate manuals. So I wanted to try to make something that like needs as little explanation as possible.
That's the best approach.
And that's and that's part of the designing too. Having like a few small rules to follow, that's like this: if you do these things, then something's going to start happening. And like making little shapes around there's certain ins or outs or something, trying to like make it simple. And really, I think also part of it is the students, but wanting to get that connection and have synthesizers be able to be useful in the classroom is also about like making it understandable for teachers who like may not really, they're like kind of on the fence or something, or like they can kind of see what they even like they get what's important or how this is cool or why this would be great in the classroom, but like you don't want to add any work to anybody either. You want it to be as simple to integrate as possible. And not blow up, because that's like the worst case scenario. I could be like, I get like real like super paranoid about like, oh no, like is this something I'll like go on like when I'm designing and building stuff, I've so many times I've gone on a tangent of like paranoia where I'm like, oh man, this isn't working. They're all wrong, and then I'll realize, oh, I didn't plug something in, or it's always almost always something really, really simple that I forgot to do in like my testing process. But I'm always like got my ears up for
feedback.
Impending doom.
Let's maybe dive into this. design of the interface, the signifiers that you're using on the system itself. How do you indicate what could work with what, how things would connect? You could also share your screen, maybe, if you have like a I know that on the website you have actually a pretty good large image of the system.
And you can see my cursor here too then.
Yeah.
This is the newer module, so it's kind of still figuring some of that out. But the main things that I've done here is there's I think some of it is a little, there can be it's not maybe not all an exact science all the time, like I notice, as I think for beginners, some of this stuff can be really helpful, just like having the hex nuts as outputs and the kind of round knurled nuts as inputs. Is one thing that I think can be really helpful. I also
maybe you should really zoom into this to show it. Yes.
Is that better? Okay. So yeah, you can see like the little round knurly ones, and then there's like a hex here, and those are just to show, find a way that didn't involve spending a ton of money to show that this is stuff that's just available, pretty easily available, to show a difference here. So these are like gate outputs and CV outputs of the ADSR, and then, sorry, I'm going to scan over here. And then, yeah, like, so this is kind of like the synth voice here on the right. And so all these inputs have circles around them, and they're all some kind of control input. And then there's other inputs here that have squares around them, and they are more so audio inputs.
Right.
Now, not all the time. If you dig deeper, it's like there's exceptions, and obviously a VCA. This is the VCA over here. I might even have a better picture. Oh, here, this is without any wires.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's the VCA over there on the right. And right, so yeah, there's exceptions. Obviously, you can use a VCA for other things. It's just going to change the amplitude of a wave that goes into it, and it could be control LFO or otherwise. And then if we look over here, the LFO is like the first thing I kind of wrapped up, and just trying to make it super simple, and just so you can see that there's hexagonal nuts, but they also have the wave going across there, so it's pretty clear what's going to be coming out there. Yeah.
So maybe they played with the ranges of the LFO.
That could be what I think that's what it was. Yeah. They were just really going wild on that range switch. And yeah, so this is the so go ahead.
No, yeah, I was just about to ask about the comparator.
Yeah, so like I said, I think it's really getting pretty close, but I haven't settled entirely. This is a little bit of like, still in the prototype zone. But yeah, you set a high and low voltage just a value. So uh, could be 0 to 1 volts here, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and then you have a little bit of a sequence that will repeat. The triangle wave here is generated, so it's got basically a little LFO in here, and the triangle wave is normal to input 1, and then input 1 is normal to input 2, input 2 is normal to input 3, input 3 is normal to input 4.
Yeah.
So with nothing plugged in, you'll have this triangle wave triggering these gates depending on what the voltage is set. So they can all be flashing, they could all be high at the same time, because whenever these are 4 separate window comparators. Whenever the comparator sees the voltage in its range, it's going to send a high out here. So if they're all set to be the same range, then they're all going to be at the same time. You could also have it be where like 1, 3, 2, 4, whatever. And then also, if you were to take another signal and put it into the inputs, then that would be normaled through all 4 of the inputs. So instead of the triangle wave, which would go, say, if you had it set up staggered where it was the lowest to the highest range, the triangle would have you going 1 through 4, and then 4, 3, 2, 1. If you had a ramp, it would go 1 through 4, and then it would start back at 1 and kind of keep cycling that way. There's a DC bias, so the comparator's only positive voltage range. So if you have anything with a negative voltage, you can, it's okay. It's not gonna, it's protected, but you're gonna chop off half of your wave because it's only gonna be looking at the positive. So you can add bias to then boost that up. And the bias is fun, just kind of it also can start to play around with this sequence that's kind of being developed by the different ranges here.
Yeah.
And really that's what this module is, really why I created the mixer here, because then you could take the 4 gates out here and now you create a sequence because it's going through the 4 attenuators. And you could also slew them, slew limiting, so then you're kind of gliding in between. And the nice thing about the comparator too is that it works in audio rate, so you can use it as, you can create a bunch of pulses at audio rate, or you can start doing some wave shaping. There's a lot of stuff that you get from just being able to compare voltage, like a voltage input. And you could also have 4 separate waveforms in here, or you can have 2 and 2. So yeah, there's a lot of, like, I feel like there's a lot of flexibility there, and trying to make it as clear as possible. And sometimes that, with a lot of things, there's a really clear, try to zoom out a little bit. There's a really clear like signal flow, especially say like with the VCA, where you got input, CV, everything kind of like goes up the ladder. So now when you're adding different things here, got to figure out a way to like, okay, so there's like an LFO that's just kind of like popped in to this comparator, but it also makes it that it's like a standalone module, which I really like. So finding ways to have that in there and still be aligned with, I guess, the flow of the signal.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine that it's a challenge to add in general, but the comparator is I know that I would have a lot of fun with it.
Oh yeah.
But I can imagine that it's a bit more complex to someone who does, to someone who is just really learning and trying to understand. But at the same time, I can what would be interesting is if are they using oscilloscopes in the class?
The physics class is going to have an 84 HP system. So this is the 60 HP system, but the class is going to have basically an oscilloscope that pops out over on the right side here.
As a
Yeah.
module?
Yes. It's just it's similar to Waveform has their really cool small oscilloscope. It's based on this DSO 138. There's it's similar to that, and that it's a cheap oscilloscope that you can get for like under $30, and then kind of adjust it to work with your rack power and put a faceplate on it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think that this brings this to a whole new level of receiving feedback. So then all the wave shaping that you're doing with something like the comparator becomes much more much clearer. I think that a filter a filter of mixing can be very easy or fairly easy to understand in a glance. And if they don't understand, you just do like how the DJs are doing like and then they get it.
The Bee Gees, you said?
The DJs.
The DJs. Oh yeah.
But when you start doing like when you start to mess with the sound and come up with different shapes, then to wrap your head around it, I think for myself it was much easier when I started looking at things in the oscilloscope and you start really understanding how FM actually works, or how ring modulation actually works. So that's really cool that you're actually adding this. I also saw something else on your website that I found interesting. Before I get there though, I wanted to also talk about the headphone jacks, because you just mentioned it briefly, but I think this is a really clever design for the purpose that you are designing an instrument. Do you have maybe a picture of it so you could show what I'm talking about?
There was one on the I think I might have downloaded one recently. Yeah, this is one on one side and one on, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's oops.
Was this something that, do you remember how this came about? Was this just like something you thought about yourself, or was it like you saw students working and?
I don't remember really, actually, but yeah, I don't.
Okay.
I know that it was, there's in part it's just great for collaborating and working with a teacher, but also I think for the school sometimes it's nice to have the option to have two kids, even like we were talking about chemistry lab, right? Like usually you have two or maybe more people working on in one group, just based on the amount of materials that you have. So it might not be feasible to have every student has a small modular system, but like two for one, two per system, or that might work out a little bit better. But I just right now it's coming from the sum output of the VCA. This is a dual VCA, and right now it's just coming straight from there to a little headphone amplifier here, but I might change that. I think that design for me, the most difficult thing is making decisions. It's just figuring out, okay, am I going to do this way or that way, or what's really the most helpful thing. The nice thing about, I think, having the oscilloscope is then maybe connected to there, or I might just have a little 3.5 millimeter jack on the side where you can just plug whatever in and then make your own decision, but kind of trying to make it as simple as possible.
Yeah, I think first of all, I completely agree that decision making is the hardest thing to do. I think that's just in general. And especially when you're building something, because there are costs to everything, not only financial costs, but just time. if you're now putting the jacks without really thinking too much, maybe let's say you just put them on the left side, and then you realize, yeah, actually, this would make much more sense if I actually put one here and one there, because
Right.
two people are going to be using it.
Right.
It's these small details that make it just more logical and more thoughtful of the user when they play it. They don't really think, when they don't think about it, when they just feel like, oh, this makes sense, I should just plug my headphones here, you know, you did a
Right.
good job. When
Right.
they're like, where is the headphones for me, and they're like, oh yeah, it's here, and then, oh, I need a longer cable, then you know you did a bad job.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And the nice
Both.
thing, yeah, I
Right.
mean,
Both.
yeah, go ahead.
No. 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 I was just agreeing with you.
Yeah, the nice thing about this design is that it's not really a big deal to make a change in that sense, because everything is built out of wood, laser cut. So
Yes.
yeah, with a finger boxes, it's really easy to just create this as a prototype, realize, okay, I made a mistake, just make another one and change it.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's easier, I guess, than maybe making a change in a verbose system.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
which
Yeah. I
is
mean,
designed for a completely different target audience, so that makes sense.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Very much so. Yeah. And I think, yeah, this has just been helpful for me as I've been, and part of it was, it started off, the wood started out as like, I don't know how many iterations I'm going to need to go through before I'm comfortable with something, and I
Mm,
don't want to create a bunch of plastic waste while I'm in the design process. And
totally.
then it
Yeah.
just happened like, all right, I actually kind of like how this looks, and I feel like it's maybe even like a little bit friendlier to approach, you know. um, it's just a little more grounded maybe, but yeah, I like it.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about the solar cell CV thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now.
Oh no, you just
Keep it.
yeah, because I want to see it. I want
Okay.
students to see it. I think it's a really cool idea.
Yeah, that's a cool. Let's see what I got here. I get to that it's somewhere deep in the.
I think I found it through the Instagram page, where you go when you click the link on the Instagram page, then
Oh yeah,
you can
yeah.
actually choose there. And I was like, solar what? What did you do? This was the first thing. Like, I saw a shop, the website, whatever. Like, and then I saw this. Like, oh, I need to see this.
Yeah, yeah, I was interested in doing just experimenting with these solar cells. You can get these on eBay. People, I guess, and they're like, if there's a storm and somebody's solar panel breaks or whatnot, but they sell these separate solar cells that you can get. And initially, I was thinking about just purely powering, you know, a cell phone charger or something like that.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, then I thought about, oh, well, could be kind of be cool to use for a CV source. So, you know, depending on how much sun there is on it, it's it's not going to give you that much variation, but it is kind of cool, and it's a cool way to add some more sciency-ness into the mix. So yeah, I just took an old frame that I had and put a 3.5 millimeter jack in there, and it's totally passive. So it's just what's coming out of the solar panel. There's some resistors in the back there too. Um, and yeah, I think that yeah, and then I posted this a picture of a bigger one, and this is, I ended up using this for a performance.
Mm.
A friend of mine has a um, kind of a organization, or maybe a small business here in the city called Solar Power for Artists,
Mm-hmm.
and does a lot of work with solar panels and whatnot. And so he had a thing in a garden here in Brooklyn, and so I hooked this up to a little homemade synth and did some Yeah, had a little performance with that. Just kind of like opening and just like opening and shutting this box to like let more light in onto the panels.
Is it like really responsive?
Yeah, I mean, it goes from, if it's dark, it's gonna, so these are each, I think, a half a volt, so that's two and a half.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you have something that's, especially if it's like a volts per octave, you can get a lot there.
Hmm.
And if it's dark, it's going to be almost nothing. And then if it's really, I mean, you really got to have like really strong sun on it to get all the way up to the max. Like, so this one was, it was kind of an overcast day, and I had two of them together, and there was still only, a third of a volt.
Yeah.
But it's
But
fun.
is there any latency?
No, no, no. It's all, everything is, it's like it's like pure science. So there's just electrons flowing. When the light hits the solar cells, the electrons start to flow, and then you're in business.
I think that is a really interesting thing to show students, especially now when the sun is out. Just like showing a box like this and just explaining, okay, look, this is literally the sun running this thing. It's
Yeah.
I think it's really it's pure magic.
Yeah, yeah. There's a module out there somewhere. I saw someone did something where they kind of like put one of these or a smaller version onto a faceplate.
Hmm.
It's out there somewhere. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's super cool.
I'm not sure if it's a if as a module it makes as much sense as that box that you showed.
Hmm.
I would even say like it would be interesting to like maybe if one of my students want to pick this up to design a box for this, to design an instrument that is meant to control another synth with the sun
Hmm.
or with light. Yeah, with the sun. So maybe they're like I don't know, like maybe it's a complex box with different amounts of panels, and they're all covered, but then you have like switches that you can open and close, and then you can get more sun or less sun.
Like actually close off, like kind of create shade with switches.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
just imagine an installation in a playground
Hmm.
where you have like, yeah, it's like a robust installation with sound, uh, and and it just runs when the sun is out, and the
Hmm.
kids can like shut things off, put them on, and like sound changes.
Hmm.
Each of them is maybe connected to a different thing in the circuit. Like one is connected to the filter, one is connected to the oscillator, or like the mixing of a few uh, voices.
Totally. Yeah, yeah. There's so much. I mean, it's just a voltage, so you can do so much with
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
and you could probably
Yeah.
amplify it, right? Like it doesn't have to be um like, right, you could use this as like well, it's sort of faking it.
It's sort of what? Sorry.
It's faking it a bit, but you could use
Oh, oh
this.
yeah.
Yeah, but you could
Yeah.
use this as a certain trigger to show how things work.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting space to look at.
It's not they're not difficult to solder up too. A little bit fragile, but
Hmm.
they're not too difficult to solder up. Yeah, there was a dream of a noise garden that never happened, but it was a dream a few summers ago. Just like to have little things hanging in the trees and whatnot. Yeah, because you could also hook it up to like a motor or something. There's a lot that you can do with it. Yeah, if you on Instagram, check out Solar Power for Artist Alex Nathanson. He does some really cool stuff.
Definitely will do. Nice. Um, yeah, Wes. I think that what you're doing is really remarkable. I think that the whole vision of working with students and with like bringing all this knowledge through building physics lessons through synthesis. I think that's a really cool and worthy
Hmm.
thing to do. So that's really beautiful.
Thanks, man. Yeah, and I think that there's a lot more that could come from that too. You know, it's like for STEM, that's the obvious role. I think the fact that it connects to creativity is really um, a great aspect. And like again, it's a great way to add a context that can maybe create more inquiry, you know, or just
Hmm.
like motivation. And um, I remember emailing back and forth with Modular Moon about STEM and the list that came back of all the other possible you know, applications and benefits of using modular synthesis was really inspiring. They're doing cool stuff, and it's like, yeah, STEM is one thing, and that's kind of where the root here. But I think that just even as like kind of a little bit of like a meditative thing, it's just like
Oh,
there's so
definitely.
much to it that can really be super positive and helpful. You know, even this month I was thinking about that just recently too, like um adding, just kind of researching what it's like for LGBTQ students in a STEM classroom, and um, kind of the importance of seeing um, kind of some visibility in a field and how that important that can be. And there are um, some there's been some technological developments that have happened that are um, from the community, but there's still like not a lot of representation.
Mm.
um, but this electronic music is kind of like owes so much to
Oh
the
yeah.
LGBTQ community.
Oh yeah.
So the visibility there is so great, and even something like that, I think, is like a really cool aspect of using this kind of technology in a classroom. Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely. Yes. Hey, Wes, thanks so much. This was really, really inspiring, and I hope to see more of these modules coming up. And I'm really curious to see the 84 HP system when it
Yes.
comes out. So I'm definitely
Yes.
gonna keep my eye on your Instagram account when it comes out.
Thanks so much. Appreciate you.
No problem, man. Yeah, we'll be in touch.
Okay.